Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hey, hello there, folks. How you doing? Okay, so we're here today talking a bit about COVID-19. Now, I know a lot of you are sick of hearing about COVID-19. I get it, and I hadn't really planned to do this video, but just been seeing a lot of things being said recently that I just felt I wanted to address, or at least I wanted to show you guys something I see that shows us a clear way to, of how this can be dealt with without complete lockdowns and shutdowns and stuff like that. It should be possible to start to open things back up, and I'm going to go through that here in this video of why I think that's possible. So it's going to involve a few things. So number one, we're going to be looking at the fact that which countries in the world are flattening the curve, and how are they doing it, right? And for me, those are the two main things of how, which countries are being successful at flattening the curve, and what is it that's contributing to them being able to do that. And I think looking at those couple things, I think is important. I've been hearing a lot of people, recently, I see a lot of back and forth on Facebook and stuff, and you see like the liberals saying, oh, it's all Trump's fault, and then you see like the conservatives, saying, oh, the liberals, are want too much or whatever. I mean, just see this back and forth. Look, my opinion, folks, is that our leaders were slow to react. All of them. I'm not singling anyone out. They all were slow to react. I don't give a damn what side of the aisle they were on. All of them were slow to react. Folks, we all knew, we were hearing about this corona thing back in January. Come on, folks, be honest with yourself. We were hearing about this thing back in January, and we were hearing about it on social media and everything. There was an awareness for us, regular Americans, on Facebook, that we knew that this was coming. Can you imagine the intelligence that was coming into our government? So, when I say that they were slow to react, I mean they were slow to react. Why wasn't medical PPE starting to be built up in January? Right? Why wasn't it? Why wouldn't it have been? We're clearly hearing about Italy. We're clearly hearing about all these things. We're hearing about these things where it's devastating countries and stuff. And in January, when we're hearing about all this, we do nothing. Nobody does anything. Does Congress do anything? Do they start ordering, to make more personal protective equipment, particularly for medical workers, in anticipation of this thing that was coming? No. Right? Nobody does anything. Right? And then March 18th, it starts hitting our shores here in the U.S., and then suddenly it becomes urgent. And by that point, it's way urgent. Way, way urgent. Which is why it would have been helpful if we had a little bit of foresight, if our leaders had a little bit of foresight back in January, February, to start building up the medical PPE, possibly even looking into, ventilators. Back in January. This stuff could have all been being looked into. It didn't have to be, you didn't have to start, advertising and panicking anybody, but our government could have been working on that, making stockpiles of personal protective equipment, and possibly even placing some orders for some ventilators and that sort of stuff. I'm just saying that we had awareness of this in January, and something could have started to be done then. Maybe not a lockdown in January because it wasn't really here yet, but something could have been done. Some preparation could have been started, and it wasn't. Not by a single leader you want to speak of in our government. Congress, president, any of them. None of them. Okay? That's the reality of it. So then, middle of March, coronavirus starts hitting our shores, and it starts, the numbers are starting to jump up for coronavirus around the middle of March. Then suddenly it becomes a concern, right? Okay, So at that point, we have no medical personal protective equipment built up. We haven't inquired into ventilators or anything like that, and so this is where we're at. We're now with it on our doorstep. We're scrambling to now try to come up with this medical personal protective equipment and all these things. We should have known were coming. Our government certainly should have, because they should have had much more detailed information than what we, the general public, were getting on Facebook. All right? Okay. Having said all of that, I want to show everybody right now what's going on in South Korea. Okay? South Korea is one of the cultures on our planet that they actually naturally wear masks in public, or at least they often do. And with COVID-19 now, they are all wearing masks in public, and that's the way it is in South Korea. Now, there's one other thing they're doing in South Korea that's interesting. I'm going to show you that here today. And I honestly don't know. I don't understand really why this couldn't be done here in America already, because we already have the Patriot Act. You know what I mean? Which means the government can monitor our cell phones, and you know what I mean? The government can most likely already monitor like what South Korea is monitoring, like credit card transactions and stuff, and they're tracking people so that when people without the disease, without COVID, go somewhere where they might be contacting somebody that did have it, or where they end up, they're being able to trace people so that they can inform people, when they've been somewhere where they might have gotten infected. They're actually tracing people that way so that they can trace the infection and how it's spreading. Now, it is concerning, obviously, to have Big Brother getting in to that sort of stuff. But as I said, here in the United States, we already have the Patriot Act. The government already has the ability to be watching it. In fact, I already know that they're doing it because, folks, after the lockdown, just a couple days after the lockdown, they were showing us how drivers on the freeways were driving much faster now because there was less traffic. And so the average speeds on the freeway were much higher. They were doing that through cell phone data, folks. That was cell phone data. They were tracing people's cell phones on the freeway, how fast they were moving down the freeway. So you're telling me that, the United States can't do a similar track and trace like what South Korea is doing? So these are the things that South Korea is doing, folks. They have really flattened the curve there in South Korea. It's very interesting here, and I'm going to show you guys. So first thing I'm going to show you right here is, number one, South Korea's curve, so that you can see how they did have an initial rise. They had a pretty steep climb, but then they flattened it out really quick. So you'll see that right here. I'll go ahead and show you right now. Okay, folks, so this is what I want to show you. This is South Korea's curve right here for active cases. Okay, active cases of COVID-19 in South Korea. So here we are in February 18th, about February 21st, right? That looks like when it started. Now, I want to point out to you, February 21st is way before it started here in the U.S., right, folks? Right. So here it goes. South Korea has its initial spike, okay? And by about March 7th, between March 7th and March 10th, they are at a rate of, they're currently infected, their number of infected at that time was a little over 7,000. It continued to rise a little bit until we get to that. That's probably the peak right there. That's 73. So that would be the peak of it right there. 73. So 7,362 people at that point. And from there, it dips, one more little tiny spike, and then it begins to dip back down. So by March, so right here, March 18th, March 20th there, hold on. So March 19th, March 18th, that's when it was really starting. That's when we were starting to worry about it here in California and in the United States. That's roughly shortly after March 18th is when California initiated its lockdown. So basically, South Korea, before this thing has even gotten to our shores, really, has already started to flatten out their curve. By the time we're seeing it on our soil. So here's the question, folks. If South Korea had less time, obviously, to prepare for this, seeing as it started for them back in middle February, right? They had less time to collect information and prepare for this, and yet look at how well they're doing. Their current infected cases is continuing to go down and down and down. You see here, right? I want to point out one other thing about this curve, folks. Remember what McGilla was talking about when we did our live about the coronavirus and the curves? Remember how he was saying how everybody kept projecting that the back side of the curve would match here? Well, look at South Korea's curve. It's coming out exactly the way McGilla was predicting. Exactly the way that McGilla was predicting in that video. So I just wanted to point that out to some people as well, because there were some people who were you know, suggesting that McGilla might not have known what he was talking about. Well, here's the proof, folks. He looks like he was exactly right. That the back side of the curve is not going to match the front side of the curve. So, anyways, so what you've got now is right now, as of May 10th, South Korea currently has 1,008 infected with coronavirus. When back in March, on March 11th, they had 7,362 people that were currently infected on that day in March. So I think that's interesting, folks, but it's like I said, by the time it was hitting our shores, South Korea was already flattening the curve and bringing the number of cases down. So then we look here at total deaths. You know, their total deaths in South Korea right now haven't even gotten over 300 yet. As of May 10th, they're at 256. The daily new deaths in South Korea. Now look, here you can see when it was in March and stuff, when they were at the peak of their curve, they had all these deaths happening. But now they're coming into April that they've gotten control of it. Now look at how many are happening per day. Not a whole lot, folks. You can see that they have knocked the numbers down. So this is what I wanted to show everybody, that clearly South Korea has figured it out. They have figured it out, and they know they have gotten it under control. Now, they've done it through two things, as I said. It's part of it is a track and trace thing where they're using credit card companies and the information of people using their debit cards and credit cards, and they're also using cell phone data. They're working with the cell phone companies, and they're creating a track and trace system where they're able to effectively map how this thing is spreading in their country, and it's helping them get a hold on it. I'm not too crazy about Big Brother having a look in on our personal information like that on our phones and our debit cards and credit cards, but in the short term, to help with this mess that we're in, the Patriot Act's already there. There's nothing, we can't really do much about that. It's already in existence, and the government already has the ability to track these things, in my mind. And so why aren't they trying to use that for something positive? You know what I mean? But that's how South Korea is doing it. Regardless of what you may think of the methods, that's how they're doing it, and you can see it's clearly having an effect, where they're only having 1 or 2 deaths per day, or even none here or here, right? No deaths in there either. So this is something to keep in mind of. Now I'm going to show you one other thing that South Korea is doing that is also interesting, folks, because they've been able to so effectively deal with the spread of the COVID-19, and they've effectively been able to keep it under control, that they are now looking to open up something else. I'm going to show you that right now. Alright, folks, so this is the other thing I wanted to show you. In South Korea, because they feel they've gotten COVID-19 under control enough, they are starting baseball back up. Now, I will point out to you that it's not strictly the same. These are the seats back here, folks. You can see they're not filling the stadiums with people, but they are getting the actual players out on the field to play. And so that's obviously something that's good, because when people are obviously in lockdowns and stuff like that, having entertainment, sports is a big form of entertainment for a lot of people. So I think it's obviously a good sign. They're looking to get back to, kind of business as usual, back to the normal and everything, or as close to it. But they're still being careful, as I say, because look at these empty stands, folks. They understand that they still can't have large groups of people gathering, because that will obviously end up, causing the virus to go to it'll cause it to the virus to spike again, and the cases to spike again. So they're obviously being careful. But here you can see they got all the players back out there with masks on to play. So, all right. Okay, so by Victoria Kim, staff writer at the LA Times in Seoul. Former U.S. Major League player Kim Hyun-soo sent the ball cracking over the left field fence, marking the first home run of the long-awaited season of the South Korea's beloved baseball league. But instead of basking in thunderous applause and hollers from adoring fans, Kim loped across home plate to a smattering of claps from a few dozen reporters and league employees. After scoring 2 runs for his Seoul-based LG Twins, Kim approached a teammate who waited with his arms up, but caught himself at the last second, narrowly avoiding a high five, banned by the league as a coronavirus precaution. He bumped elbows with another teammate. Most of the stadium's 25,553 seats, a tough get in a normal year for a game between the Twins and their arch rival, the Doosan Bears, were empty. Baseball returned to South Korea under drizzly and overcast skies Tuesday, a rare professional sporting league to resume games while much of the world remains under lockdown with no end in sight to the COVID-19 pandemic. The 5-game opening day showed South Korea testing the waters for a cautious return to normalcy on a day that the country reported just 3 new cases of coronavirus, a sign that the virus community spread has largely been halted. And I think that may be very right. It does seem that they have effectively flattened the curve, and that their new cases are dwindling. They're certainly they certainly are not overwhelming their medical community there in South Korea, and I think that may also be leading to the reason why they have so little deaths, because their medical system isn't overwhelmed, because their doctors have the time to give certain patients that need it the intensive, personal, individual care that some people will need with this virus. And so less people are going to slip through the cracks and die due to this, just because the medical community isn't overwhelmed. So that's part of this. The other thing that South Korea is doing, folks, is, like I said, the mask wearing, which I'll talk a little bit more about now. Okay, so as you can see, there's a fair amount of evidence to suggest that South Korea found a way to get it under control. The coronavirus, the COVID-19. So, and like I said, they had less time to prepare for it, because it hit them like a full month before it hit us. And by the time it was hitting us, they were already flattening their curve. That's, to me, that's, that says something. That suggests something. So, I honestly don't know what our leaders here in the U.S. have been doing. I don't know what they've been looking at. I don't know what I just don't get it. As I said in the beginning of the video, don't know why in January we weren't thinking to start building up personal protective equipment for our medical staff, our medical community. Why that thought wasn't happening. You know what I mean? But now here we are. We're, into May now, and nobody has looked to try to see if they can duplicate what South Korea has done. I think that's somewhat amazing. Now, I will say that here in California, that the facial covering, all that kind of stuff has been very, very pushed here, and I'm glad, and because I think it's a good thing. To explain to people why. I mean, number one, by getting back out in public wearing masks and stuff. Number one, we're getting back out in public again. so that we are still engaging with the world, engaging with microbes and things that we're normally that our immune system normally engages, that keeps our immune systems healthy, even because we are engaging these things. We need to get back out and get busy again, so that our bodies are coming into contact with those things. We don't necessarily want to come in contact with corona, but it's something that's somewhat inevitable. Most of us that have to, interact with the real world are going to end up with this thing. And that's just the way it is. Now, most of us are going to be maybe asymptomatic, or it's going to be fairly mild, and then it'll go on. Some others are going to have more trouble with it. So we need to be mindful of those who are more susceptible. We need to just be mindful, folks. Just common sense, really. I'm not telling anybody that they need to do anything outlandish. I mainly just, watch out. You don't want to, you want to be careful about going around your elderly relatives. You just want to be mindful and careful and stuff, because you don't necessarily want them to get sick, because obviously it's the elderly and people with pre-existing lung conditions like asthma or COPD and stuff like that are more susceptible to this thing. So we want to be mindful about going around, those types of people who are at risk, But other than that, I think if we all just wear masks in public for the next 6 months or so that when we do come down with it, and we're in that stage where we're either asymptomatic or we're in that stage where we're contagious, but we're not having any symptoms yet, at least our masks will be keeping us from infecting as others, or at least it will keep us from infecting as many as we would have without a mask. I don't know. Does everybody understand that? What I'm saying? I understand that this isn't going to stop COVID, right? Does everybody understand that? This isn't COVID proof. If you put this on your face, it doesn't mean you're never going to get sick. I mean, I want to make that clear. All this little guy does, is knocks down the probabilities of transmission. And when you knock down the probabilities of transmission, that means less people get it, and it doesn't overwhelm our medical community. So if wearing masks allows us to get back to work and to keep the numbers down, that's the answer. That's the answer. Right? Because I don't like the current situation we're in, folks. There's a lot of fear out there. There is a lot of fear. Number one, you got people that are afraid of the COVID-19 virus. Okay? And that it might possibly kill some of their loved ones, or and so there's the fear around the COVID-19 itself. Okay? But, and this is why I'm so concerned with why our leaders didn't start stockpiling some kind of medical PPE back in January or February, but because nothing was done until literally this whole thing was upon us, only then did our leaders suddenly start to take it seriously. But by that point, we wasted 2 months that we could have been preparing for it. And so it creates another situation where now people are afraid, and now we had to institute all these lockdowns. And because nobody was looking into this since January like they should have been, nobody has figured out what to do yet. And everybody wants to just continue the lockdowns. And that's a problem. That's a problem, folks, because you got the other side that's scary about this. The other side that's scary about this is the people that are stuck at home with no work. Can't afford to pay their rent, mortgage, can't pay and feed their own kids even, possibly. People can't stay out of work forever, and unemployment isn't gonna do it. Unemployment is not going to help you feed a family. I'm sorry, it's not. That's the scary part of this. So yes, we do need to start thinking about how we can lift these lockdowns and how we can start to get back to normal. We can't just go right back to normal, folks. We have to use some common sense. We have to be careful. We're gonna have to live a slightly altered kind of lifestyle for 8 to 10 months. I don't know, whatever, 6 to 10 months. We're gonna have to, wear masks in public and be mindful of social distancing for a certain number of months, and it'll be uncomfortable. But it's much better. It's much better that to be a little bit uncomfortable for a while, but to be able to get things kind of back to normal so that people can get back to work and so they can support their families and stuff like that. Because trust me, look, folks, the government isn't going to bail you out from your time or from your time lord. Haha. Anyway, the government's not going to bail you out from your landlord. Your landlord wants to pay his bills too. Okay, so I mean, some real critical thinking needs to get done about this. Our leaders need to maybe look at what South Korea has done and possibly see what they can emulate of that. Maybe they can't do all the tracking that South Korea is doing. But hey, we can put these on our face. We can put these on our faces, and we can limit the chances that we will infect somebody else when we are getting it, right? So that we can lower the chances that we will infect somebody else. That's what this will do. As I said before, this is not COVID proof, folks. Even wearing a mask, there's a chance you'll still be able to get COVID. My whole point is that it knocks down the rate of transmission so that our medical community isn't overwhelmed and can handle the crisis. So that when the people are getting sick and coming into the hospitals, that they aren't overwhelmed and they can give some intensive personal care to one or two people who are really struggling, right? And then by being able to give that intense personal care, because they're not overwhelmed, with too many people and too many beds, and if they're able to give that intense personal attention to people when they need it, less people slip through the cracks and die. Understand how it's important. That's what's important, is for the slowing of the spread so that it doesn't overwhelm the medical community, thus meaning less deaths. That's all we're trying to do here. But like I said, there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear. Fear of COVID-19, fear of people being afraid that they won't be able to pay the bills and feed their families. This is a lot of fear that's building up. Which brings me to my final point, folks. You heard me talking about the Patriot Act earlier. Many of you know how I feel about AEDPA. Okay? Both of these things came at a time when the American public was fearful. You know where I'm going with this, right? Both of those things came at times when the American public was fearful. AEDPA came in the wake of the Oklahoma City bombing. That's when AEDPA came. Congress put that bill through and it went through, right? Then we have the Patriot Act. 9/11. 9/11. The people got all scared. Congress pushed through the Patriot Act. So what I want to tell everybody right now is worry less about party lines. Be watching every single person in Congress. Watch every one of them. Be looking for anything they might be trying to do right now to manipulate the fear that has been created. And I believe has been amplified by the fact that our leaders did nothing until this was upon us. Okay? That's basically how I feel. So I want everybody to remember, it's when the people are in the most fear that Congress is able to do the most abominable things. So keep that in mind. And it's like I said, it's for me it has nothing to do with party lines. For me it's about Congress has twice proved that they are willing to manipulate the fear of the American people. So I want everybody to be mindful of that, and that is my big reminder here at the end, regarding the current situation with COVID-19 and the fear that is out there. So be mindful of it, folks. Be brave. I know there's a lot of reason to fear out there. I know there's a lot of I get it, I do, but don't let that fear allow the greedy jerks in Congress to remove any more of your rights. All right? Okay, folks, that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.